My grandfather on my mother's side, who is 101 years old, he came from a very large merchant family in Iran. And prior to the revolution, they owned what is probably the Procter and Gamble of Iran, remanufacturing of consumer products. And I have photos that of all the products that they made, whether it was remanufacturing Nivea cream in Iran, and they would go and do licensing agreements. And my grandfather, along with his brothers, I think he has almost 10 brothers, were sort of just their jobs were running different parts of the family business. And then in 79, the new regime, the theocracy, seized all of the assets and the company entirely and kicked the family out of Iran. And a lot of us ended up in the countries where we had built a base. Thankfully, my grandfather was tasked with being the American liaison for the company. So he already had a base in New York, and he had married an American woman. And I credit a lot of the success of the family to my grandmother. My grandmother was half Polish Jewish, half Scottish. She grew up in the Bronx and then moved to Miami. She met my grandfather, who barely spoke any English, and she moved back to Iran with him. And she was the American citizen, the American passport that helped get a lot of people out of Iran. And so, because they had established a base in New York, and they were able to bring the rest of the family here. My mother was born in the U.S., so she's half American, half Iranian. And my grandmother's family, who is American, her Polish side fled Europe in 1918 and it fled the pogroms, and her Scottish side came here as well. So I'm a mutt. I'm a mutt of people that have been booted out from everywhere because of who they are and what their religion is. And hearing these stories over the years really, I think, made me have empathy for the immigrant mindset and what can happen if things go wrong in your country politically, or if there are conflicts and if bad people get into power. And then my father, I would credit, is sort of the entry point for a lot of people into the technology space. I mean, he grew up in Iran and wanted to come to the US, wanted to go to MIT and study electrical engineering. That's what he had that vision. And he did that. And then when the revolution happened in Iran, he moved to California to get an MBA at Stanford. His classmates happened to be Scott McNealy, Vinod Khosla, Bob Cagle, founder of Benchmark, and Ballmer was a year younger than him at Stanford. Like that was a golden time in Silicon Valley, and that really opened his eyes to what was possible. And so he was on the exec team of Zilog, which ultimately became Xilinx, which is still a publicly traded company. He then was involved in a lot of early stage startups and helped launch the careers of many people in the family. Actually, our house was sort of like an outpost for cousins. My mom's side would come and hang out with my mom and my dad in the Bay Area, and they would be exposed to technology, and that sort of was a launch pad for their careers. And we've all helped each other over the years. I mean, the Facebook introduction came from my cousin Hadi Partovi to Sean Parker, right? Like these are connections that have been made over the years, and these are how really we've been able to build a base in technology. I would say that the family has always, on my father's side and my mother's side, I would say what overrides as a theme is curiosity. We have strong curiosity in the family. We have curiosity around how things work, how people conduct business, how that is who we are. And it's the curiosity that I think allows us to find success. And I would say that most of the people in the family, they're not looking just to hoard money. They're curious about the next thing. What's the new technology? What's the new theme? We're curious about politics. I mean, my uncle, for example, he is in USAID and as a liaison to Africa investment policy for the State Department. I mean, the curiosity throughout the family is highly pervasive, and it's also infectious. Like we all get together as a family maybe once every 4 years, and the cross-pollination of each other's curiosity leads to new opportunities. And so I would say always be curious is the takeaway from that, and what has led the family, I think, to be so successful. We could have all stayed in Iran, not been curious about what it would have been like to come to America. I think I look at my dad once in a while, and he hasn't been home in 45 years. I can't imagine not going home in 45 years. And yet you would never know he's Iranian. He has no accent. He's American. And so I think the curiosity is what drives our family. And I'm lucky to have that from both of my parents.